We are here today in protest against the reversal of the flow of Line 9, and that they'll be putting the heavy crude oil from the tar sands through it. We have a few speakers here today, and then of course anybody else who would like to speak is always welcome to speak. And so that will sort of be what we're doing here today. We asked you all to come in black to create a human oil spill here for a bit of visual effect. So I think for a lot of us this is a really big deal, and I know it is for me on many levels. From the beginning, when the oil comes out of the ground, a lot of these resources are extracted out of native lands, and Canada and the oil businesses, they profited off of it greatly, and our people don't. And with the omnibus bills that Harbour's brought through in this past year, it's going to be easier for them to take those lands and take out of them whatever resources they want. It'll be easier for them to not put through environmental policy. It no longer needs to be public. It will be easier for them to get these things through, as the environmental protections have now been gone thanks to the omnibus bills. And they'll be able to take more of it out of our land. They will no longer have to consult with First Nations. And that's a massive infringement on our rights. But it's also, they're also able to take it out of everybody else's land. And in that way, it's a massive infringement on everybody's rights. And when you look at Line 9 and how we don't even have really much of a say on this, we have, four main parties, all of whose leaders support it. And so you can't wait and hope for going to the polls to change who's in charge of the country to end this or to stop this. You can't go and put in a complaint about this to the government. You can't just email in your thoughts and opinions, because they now have a large 10-page application asking for your degrees and your documentation of those degrees and your references to see if they consider your opinion valuable. And so they're telling you your opinions aren't valuable anymore as Canadians. It's not valuable. It doesn't count. They don't want to hear it. And I know what that feels like, because as a First Nations woman, that's been the case for my whole life. And my brothers and sisters around the country and around the continent, that's our reality. We don't have an opinion that's valuable. We don't have rights to our land. We don't get a say over what happens to any of our resources. And we don't get a say when the environment is destroyed to a point where nobody can live there anymore. And to a point where people are dying. Cancers are riddled through the First Nations, where there's no drinking water, where there's mass resource extraction, where there's mass chemical plants like in Amajawang, and then also out at Fort Chippewa, where the tar sands are. They are sick and they are dying, and their voice isn't important to the Canadian government, and neither is our voice here. What Line 9 will be carrying through when all this goes through is a lot more dangerous. It's more corrosive to the pipes. The pipes are old, and you can't expect to spill. And it will be difficult to clean up. It won't be like our demonstration of this human oil spill here, where we can all pack up and go home. It will be with us for as long as we can remember. We've all lived to see various oil spills, from our children seeing them, hearing about them happening down the Gulf, to ones that some of us might remember as children, like the Exxon Valdez. And those are still there, and they've destroyed that land forever. And why Why is this? What is more important than Canadian lives and Canadian voices? And it's the government's money and their allies and their ties. This weekend, there was a lot of posts on Facebook asking for people to petition to stop the FIPA deal with China. Because now China's going to have rights that we as Canadians don't have, as we as First Nations people don't have. They'll have rights to our land. They'll have rights to our land to take from it whatever they want. And the only way we can really change any of this, the only way we really get to have a say, if they don't want to listen to us through the proper channels, is for all of us to stand together. First Nations people have been rising up for a long time for our rights. And Canadian people across the country in various ways have been rising up for a long time for the environment. And now this is a time where we get to stand together. And this started when Harper put through Bill C-45, and he attacked in that First Nations people, the earth and the land, the water, and all Canadians. And he showed us what we all have in common. We all get to have our rights taken from us now. And I believe that if we stand together and we ask for everybody's rights, from the top down, from the earth to the land, and that has to do with this Line 9 and these tar sands and the oil, the plants and what we're able to eat, the animals and their lives, and that includes us humans. We're First Nations rights to Canadian rights. If you stand with us, if you fight with us in all that we ask for, we can all be protected. We can all have a voice together. And in a lot of this, we ask for decolonization. We want a country where every nation on this land is heard. And the nations on this land want a healthy earth for their children, for themselves, for their grandchildren. They want their children to have freedoms that many of you might see are starting to go, but many of us have never seen some of the freedoms that Canadians take for granted that exist on this land. We've never seen those. We've always had to fight against them. And I see that this time, this is only the start for you. It seems like a lot of small things for all of you to fight against, but each right of yours that goes is a path closer to being in the same positions as the Indigenous people of the world, the First Nations people of this country, and of the poor people of this country who are the next to lose their rights. And it just moves up and up. And so we feel it's very important that we all join together. And I know I talk about that a lot, but I really think this is our only hope. You can't vote in change anymore. And our people have known that for a long time. We've often looked at your leaders and thought, none of these people are going to change anything for us. None of these people want to treat us as nations and speak to us nation to nation and give us the same voices that the rest of Canada has. And this is what you all are looking at. You don't have those voices anymore. And I just hope you really understand that and listen to what the other speakers have to tell you today about how this is going to affect us. Because if you look how close we are to the water, and you move anywhere out, Princess Street or Highway 401, and you just keep crossing water after water after water. Because this is land we call Gautarakwe. And Gautarakwe is where all the waters come together. And if that oil spills on this land, that water is going to carry it really far. That water is going to affect everybody. And it's not going to be livable anymore. And we'll be just as sick as the people in all those First Nations communities that you occasionally briefly hear about on the news. And like them, that's all it will be. You'll hear about it briefly, occasionally on the news, but they won't let it stay in the news. They don't let it stay in the news how sick people are out by the tar sands. They don't let it stay in the news how sick people are in Amanjuang. They don't let it stay in the news how the third world conditions are at KI. They don't let it stay in the news that 40 minutes down the road, Tyananaga has dealt with no safe drinking water for over a decade. They are not going to let it stay in the news if Kingston is destroyed by the oil spilling out of Line 9. Miigwech.